classes online. My name is Benjamin. Today's video is about the ABCs of WASC English Part 2. In a previous video, we discussed the ABCs of WASC English Part 1, but today our focus is on WASC 2020 Objective Test Questions Section 2. And there are three major grammatical principles we shall be examining: A, register; B, vocabulary; and C, collocation. We are going to look at these grammatical principles as linguistic tools for solving the West African Senior School Certificates examination questions in English, particularly in Section 2. If you are new to this channel, kindly subscribe to the channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Click also on the bell icon so that whenever new videos are uploaded on the channel, you will be instantly notified. Let's dive into the lesson right away. Now, these are the questions we shall be solving. You can see WASC June 2020 English Language 2 Objective Test Questions Section 2. But before we begin to solve this problem, let's look at the grammatical tools for solving questions in Section 2. The first grammatical principle we shall be looking at is what is called register. Register is the use of language for a particular purpose or in a particular setting. It refers to the specific vocabulary chosen and expected in connection with a particular speech situation. So we shall be looking at register as a grammatical principle and as a tool for solving questions, because you need to understand that register is using language for a particular purpose or in a particular setting, and that means putting proper words in proper places. We understand that there is a specific vocabulary chosen and expected in connection with a particular speech situation. And of course, the kinds of questions you find in the West African Senior School Certificate examinations test your knowledge of register. And as we solve the questions one by one, we shall be analyzing them in the light of these grammatical principles. Now let's look at the next grammatical tool, and that is vocabulary. Of course, we already mentioned vocabulary when we were talking about register, but there's a slight difference, but they are closely related. Vocabulary has three different meanings. The first one is vocabulary means all of the words in a language. When you talk of the English vocabulary, it refers to all the words available in the English language. Then the second meaning is the words used in a particular context. For example, you talk of the business vocabulary or vocabulary of business, vocabulary of medicine or the medical vocabulary, vocabulary of agriculture, vocabulary of computer, vocabulary of the internet, vocabulary of science and technology, and so on and so forth. Every field of human activity or every discipline has its own language that is unique to it. So we can see that there is a point of convergence between vocabulary and register. All right, we shall be pointing this out. Then the third meaning of vocabulary is the words an individual person knows. When we talk of your personal vocabulary, it refers to all the words that you know in a language. And we can subdivide individual vocabulary uh, into active and passive vocabulary. When you have uh, an active vocabulary, it means all the words that you know and can use effectively in communicating your ideas in the language. So now let's now look at, well, again, let's attempt to remove this so that we can see clearly. All right. Well, let's try to leave it here. The third one is collocation. We already discussed collocation when we, when we were discussing questions in section 1, which formed the ABCs of WASC English Part 1. But let's revisit collocation. A collocation is a group of two or more words that are commonly used together in English. Collocations are words that usually go together. For example, we eat food, we drink water. So what happens if you say you want to eat water or you want to drink food? Of course, there is a distortion in meaning here. You don't, speak like that. For example, people say they want to go to sleep. You don't say you want to run to sleep, all right? You cannot say you want to cook a cake. You have to use the word that collocates with cake, and that is bake. You can bake a cake. You don't bake the meat, you steam the meat or you cook the meat. When you use words that are not collocates, you distort meaning. When you distort meaning, you violate the rules of semantics. And the moment you distort semantics, you break grammatical rules, all right? So, and then you make incorrect expressions. So, collocation is a very important aspect of language learning and language use, because collocation has to do with the practical use of words. You may know the meaning of a word denotatively, but then you can only use it correctly in speech and writing when you actually knows its collocative meaning. So when we talk of vocabulary or semantics, we talk of the denotative meaning, the connotative meaning, and the collocative meaning. Of course, this is a lesson for another day, but let's begin to solve the problems. Let's go back to the questions and then begin to solve these questions using the grammatical principles as tools for solving the problems. Now, you can see here, all right, the instruction. From the list of words lettered A to D, choose the one that best completes each of the following sentences. Now, question 11. The runner was dashed at 15. All right. The runner was dashed at 15 seconds at the end of the race. All right. Seconds is missing here. So let's try to put it so that we don't get confused. So we have seconds here at 15 seconds. All right. The runner was dashed at 15 seconds at the end of the race. A, taped. B, timed. C, bailed. D, flagged. Now, what we need to do is that we are looking for the word that can feel that best completes this sentence. There is a gap here, and we have to pick one of these options and put it in this gap to complete the sentence. And this is where your knowledge of vocabulary, your knowledge of register, your knowledge of collocation is being tested. All right. Now let's look at the words one by one. We look at their meaning. Now, what is taped? Now let's begin with the word taped. What does taped means? To tape something is to record the sound or pictures. All right. Uh, something like videotape or audio, either audio or video. That's what taped, one of the meanings of taped. Another meaning of taped is to fasten or attach something with adhesive tape. For instance, you can have a picture taped to the wall, so that obviously doesn't fit in here. We cannot say the runner was taped. No, the meaning doesn't really fit in here because we are talking of a race. All right. All right, so the option B is timed. Okay, so let's wipe the first one because that's really not the exact option. Then let's begin to examine option B, which is timed. What does timed mean here? So to time something or someone is to measure the time taken by the process. The time. For instance, if someone runs in a race, you can record the time. You can measure the time it has taken him or her to finish, to get to the finishing line. So that is exactly what timing means here, and it really corresponds with this. So we can say the runner was timed at 15 seconds at the end of the race. That is it. The time was measured. The time when the runner began at the starting point and got to the finishing line, it took 15 seconds. That was the measurement. So of course it is timing that can give us 15 seconds. You have to measure the time that the process has taken. So the appropriate option is time. The runner was timed at 15 seconds at the end of the race. In other words, it was found that it took the runner 15 seconds to get to the finishing line. Then the third option is belled, and it doesn't fit in there because to be belled or to bell something is to provide with a bell or bells. That particular proverbial this thing, who will bell the cat, is to probably tie a bell around the cat. So it doesn't really apply here. Then the next one, which is option D, is flagged, and the word flagged has certain meanings like signaling someone to stop, or as if you are using a flag. The appropriate phrase is to flag down. You can flag down a train or a taxi, something like that. Then the second meaning is to mark or identify something, use a mark to actually indicate something, to identify something of importance, maybe in a book or in an article or something. But that doesn't really fit in here. So the appropriate option here is time. That is option B. Now let's go to the next one, which is question 12. The appellate court has dashed the decision of the lower courts: A, obstructed; B, nullified; C, neutralized; D, balanced. Now, let's begin to examine these words one by one. Again, you can see that to solve questions in this section, you need vocabulary, all right? You need your own active vocabulary. You need to, have to be knowledgeable about these words in English, because you need to understand the meaning of a word. And beyond understanding the denotative meaning, what it means, you also have to understand its collocative meaning. It has to collocate with the words, other words that come before or after it. It has to be able to fit in and be used meaningfully with the words next to it. So let's now examine it. What does obstructed mean? To obstruct something is to block a road or a path or an opening. That's just what a vehicle can cause an obstruction along the road. So obstructed doesn't really fit in here, because we are not discussing motoring or transportation here. Or you can talk of obstructing justice or something, but then it means blocking a passage. But that is really not the kind of meaning that is required here. We are talking of an appellate court, that is a court of appeal, has dashed the decision of the lower court. The lower court has already given its decision, made its decision. So it cannot be obstructed. When you obstruct something, you prevent it from, from passing or from being passed. All right. But already the lower court had taken its decision. So the appellate court is not going to obstruct it, because the decision has been made. Now, let's look at option B, which is nullified. And what's the meaning of nullified? To nullify something is to make something legally null and void, to make it invalid. All right, that's what it means. And this particular meaning fits in here quite well, because when you nullify something, you make it legally null and void. You make it invalid in law. And that is really what fits in here. Don't forget, this sentence is testing your knowledge of the vocabulary of law. The vocabulary of law, or if you like, the register of lawyers, because when lawyers and judges communicate, when they use language, they use it, according to the terminologies that are unique to the legal profession. And so the word nullify is truly a legal, terminology. Is one of the words associated with law. So we can say the appellate court has nullified the decision of the lower court. And that means the appellate court has made null and void, which is also a very typical language of law. The appellate court has made null and void the decision of the lower court. So nullified is the appropriate word. Now, neutralize does not go in, because to neutralize something is to make something ineffective by applying an opposite force or effect. This is appropriate in the vocabulary of chemistry or other related subjects. You can make an acidic or alkaline substance chemically neutral, and that means you neutralize it. All right. Then another meaning of neutralize is to disarm something, such as a bomb or a similar weapon. When you disarm it, you neutralize it. Okay. So that is what it means to neutralize. Then D is balance. Of course, when we talk of balance, we we talk of a balanced diet, or in other shades of meaning, you are talking of taking everything into account, you know, and something that is fairly judged or presented is said to be balanced, you know. So, but that's really not the meaning that is intended here. All right, so we have actually looked at all the options, and the accurate option is nullified. The appellate court has nullified the decision of the lower courts. All right, let's move on to question 13, you know, and in question 13, what do we have here? The defeated boxer left the ring looking extremely dash. A. Dislocated. B. Distorted. C. Deserted. D. Dejected. All right, let's begin to look at them one by one. You know, dislocated. You can, you know, get bone dislocation, you know. Dislocated here may refer appropriately to bone dislocation. And that is to displace something, you know, or to make something shift from its position, to disturb the normal position of something, such as a bone in a joint. All right, so that's what it means to dislocate. Obviously, we cannot say the defeated boxer left the ring looking extremely dislocated. No, it doesn't fit in here. Let's look at the second one, distorted. What does distorted means? You know, when you distort something, you twist it, and this refers specifically to something like meaning or interpretation. You can distort if someone's view, or you can distort the meaning of something. All right, so that actually doesn't fit in here, because we are talking of the boxer leaving the ring and looking extremely, not distorted. Actually, the meaning doesn't fit in. I mean, the word doesn't fit in here. Now, the third one is deserted. Something deserted is something abandoned, all right? Something abandoned. A house can be deserted. A place can be deserted. If something is deserted, it is left empty or lonely, all right? Or abandoned, I mean, forsaken. So that's the meaning of deserted, but you cannot say the boxer left the ring looking extremely, you know, forsaken, or no. That doesn't fit in well. D is dejected, and that is the appropriate meaning, because when we look at at dejected, the meaning is downcast. You know, when you are downcast, it means you are downhearted, you are dispirited, you know, you are depressed. You know, that's just what it means. And that fits in well. The defeated boxer left the ring looking extremely dejected, extremely depressed, you know, demoralized, if you like. So that is the word, and it fits in here quite well. All right, so let's move on to the next page, but let's have a clean sheet so that we won't be disturbed. All right, so then we move on to question 14, and here we have, there is an election. Okay, let's highlight this. There is an election dash pending against the senator. A. Application. B. Appeal. C. Petition. D. Complaint. Now let's begin to take this one by one. When you look at the word application, this fits in, you know, it's an official request, you know, to be considered. When you write an application letter, you write an application letter when you are looking for a job in an organization. So it doesn't really fit in here, because we are talking about an election here. So this has to do with the language of politics, as well as the language of the judiciary. So these two sectors are what we are concerned with, the kind of language that is used in discussing politics, such as the election, which is an aspect of politics. And then when you talk of a petition, then is something also that is connected with the judiciary. So let's begin to look at, I have said that application is a formal request. And so you can talk about an application letter. Of course, the other meaning of application is what is abbreviated as app. You talk of mobile apps or application software, internet software, browsers, and all that. That actually doesn't fit in here. Then the second one is appeal, that is B. An appeal is something that is actually a request, is a kind of application or a request asking a higher court for a decision to reverse, for a particular decision to be reversed. It's similar to the other question we already discussed in the previous questions, where the appellate court nullified the decision by a lower court, So, and that actually happens when a kind of request is brought, an appeal is brought to the appellate court. You bring an appeal to an appeal court, and that happens when the judgment of the lower court has been given in your against you, and because it has been given against you, then you appeal to a higher court, possibly a court of appeal, asking them to reverse the decision, to nullify the decision of the lower court. So that's the meaning of appeal. It doesn't really fit in here because we are not told that there was a previous decision by a lower court against the senator. This is a fresh suit being filed. So let's look at option C, which is petition. And actually, this is the appropriate meaning because a petition is, you often hear about an election petition. So it's a word that is that collocates with, within this context, because a petition is an official document asking a court to nullify the results of an election. So this fits in here, and you hear of an election petition when an election has taken place and someone has been declared a winner. Then the other person who participated in that election and who lost the election can bring a petition asking the tribunal to nullify the election, and that is a petition. The next one is complaint. A complaint is an official a statement that saying that something is unacceptable, or that something is unsatisfactory, or that something is wrong. You can write a complaint letter or a letter of complaint, all right? But that actually doesn't fit in here. So the appropriate option is C. There is an election petition pending against the senator. Okay, so let's now move on to question 15. Let's try to move this away from here so we can see quite clearly. All right. Question 15. The manager was not in when Ado called, so he left his dash card. All right. A, supplementary. B, complementary. C, complementary, but you can notice the difference in spelling. The other complementary is complementary. And the one in option C is complementary. RY. Then option D is identification. So let's now begin to examine them one by one. Again, you can see here that we are looking at vocabulary. Vocabulary refers to the words in a language, but vocabulary has three different ramifications. Denotative meaning is the general meaning of that word. Then we have connotative meaning, the meaning it acquires in association with other words, within various contexts, in various social contexts, if you like. But then you have the collocative meaning, which is derived from collocation, and that has to do with its meaning when it is used together with other words. And that is the word that is most appropriate when we are discussing or solving questions like this, because it has to do with putting proper words in proper places. It has to do with the contextual meaning of the word, the meaning of the word as it is used in a sentence. In a previous video, I did emphasize that English words are like chameleons. Chameleons change their color from one physical environment to another. Similarly, English words change their meaning from one sentence to another, or from one linguistic environment to another. And so we need to look at the context, the way a word has been used in a sentence or passage to be able to identify its actual meaning. And when we are doing this, we are looking at collocation. All right, so, and looking at collocation, we are also looking at register, because register is using a language, for a particular situation or in a particular setting or for a particular purpose. All right, so these are interwoven. All right, so the manager was not in when Ado called, so he left his dash card, a supplementary. Of course, supplementary does not even collocate with card, because you can talk of a supplementary list. The word supplementary here means additional. When you have admission into a university, for instance, the first list of those who are admitted can come in, and when there is an additional list of those admitted, you call it the supplementary list. So that is a different thing. It can collocate with list, but certainly not with card. All right. B, we have complementary. Complementary actually is what fits in here, because when we look at the word complementary, it is derived from the word compliment. To compliment is to praise or to show approval, but complementary here fits in with card, because a complimentary card is really the card that contains your name, your position in your organization, the kind of business that your company is into, and all that. And that's the kind of card you can leave with someone, especially someone you intend doing business with. So the manager was not in when Ado called in, so he left his complimentary card. That is the kind of card you can leave. See, we have complementary. Complementary here is derived from the word to complement. And if two persons or things are complementary, it means they complement each other. And that means they combine to make each other better. They form a useful combination in terms of skills, So a husband and the wife can complement each other. They can be complementary to each other, So that's a different, it doesn't fit in here. There's nothing like complementary card in this particular, with this particular spelling, all right? You can talk of things that are complementary to each other, but not really this kind of complementary card, all right? Then D, identification. Obviously, you have an identification card, but an identification card is not the type you can leave you know, in every office you visit, because usually you have just one ID card. It's called ID card. It's an identification card. If you have a national identification card, you don't leave it with anybody. You can possibly give a copy of your ID card to an organization where specifically requested or necessary to process something. But certainly, you don't just give your identification card to anybody. Your ID card is something private to you and something you always bring out to identify yourself, even when you are confronted by security agents. So you don't leave it with people wherever you go. But the complementary card is the one that you print in a large number of copies, and you give it as a kind of something that will show people the kind of thing you do. So that is the appropriate word in this context. Then let's now move on to question 16. Coming, all right, let's try to highlight. Okay, coming from the kitchen was the sweet dash of mommy's soup. All right, so now let's look at, let's try to shift this away from here. All right, so that we can see quite clearly. All right, now let's now begin to look at these options. Option A is aroma, B, odor, C, fragrance, D, scents. Now, what all these four options have one thing in common. They are all connected with smell, you know, the sense of smell. But then there are differences, slight differences among them. Now, what is aroma? Of course, when you talk about aroma, you are talking about a pleasant smell, especially the smell of something you can eat, you know. So it fits in here actually, because you can talk of the aroma of the tea or coffee or soup or stew. You know, that is actually appropriate. Aroma is used in this context, all right? You can talk of the aroma of mommy's soup, all right? So that is actually correct. Coming from the kitchen was the sweet aroma of mommy's soup. That actually is correct. Option B is odor. Odor is more of an unpleasant smell than a pleasant one. So you talk of an unpleasant smell, you can talk of a foul odor, for instance, you know. Odor coming from something dead and decaying, you know, is appropriate. But certainly, you can't talk of the odor of mommy's soup, because that would be inappropriate. Then C is fragrance. Fragrance is a pleasant, sweet smell, but this applies to things like herbs, flowers, oils, and so on. So its fragrance is closely related to aroma, but aroma applies more to the meal, the dish, all right? Something aroma of mommy's soup. But fragrance, you can talk of the fragrance of flowers, the fragrance of herbs, the fragrance of oils, and all that. They are related, but aroma is more appropriate in this context. Then D is scent. When you talk of scent, it's more, you know, I can't say general, but it's also a pleasant smell that something has. You can talk of the scent of flowers, you know, but you also have a specific liquid, you know, with a pleasant smell that you can wear on your skin to make you smell nice. It's related to what people call perfume. You know, you wear a perfume, and that is, you know, related. You can talk of a bottle of scent. When you are going out, you wear the scent so that you will smell nice. So that is actually the meaning of this, but you cannot talk about the scent of mommy's soup. You can only talk about the aroma of mommy's soup. All right, so I believe this is clearly understood. So let's move on to the few remaining questions in this section. And that is question 17. So let's now look at question 17. There is a need to raise the teacher's salary in order to boost their dash. A, spirit. B, moral. C, soul. D, morale. Morale. All right, so now let's begin to look at this one by one. What is spirit here? Of course, when you talk of spirit here, you can classify it with the soul and the body. They go together. They are interrelated. Those are aspects of the human human life. A human being is a living soul. He has a spirit and he lives in a body. So that is just a picture of what the spirit is about. And the spirit has to do with that clear understanding. But you have some other things that resemble this context, but not quite. But that is with us. When you talk of someone's spirit, someone is either in high spirits or in low spirits, but then it's that one is with us. You talk of spirits, you can say someone is in high or low spirits. All right, that is a different thing, because that refers to a person's feelings or a person's state of mind. You can be in high or low spirits, but of course the option we are giving here is not spirits but spirit. And even if we had been given the, of course, that doesn't particularly fit in here. Now let's look at option B, which is moral. Now the word moral is an adjective, and it means something concerned with the principles of right or wrong behavior. When you talk of human behavior, then you can talk of something being moral or immoral. All right, it has to do with the sense of right or wrong, and you can talk of a moral issue, a moral question. Something can raise a moral question. All right, things about morality are always of social concern. People judge people's behavior in terms of whether it is morally right or wrong. So that is the meaning. And you can talk of moral standards and so on and so forth. So, but when we are talking about this context, this actually does not really fit in here. All right, it doesn't actually fit in properly in this context. Okay, then talking about the next option, which is the soul, then you discover that the soul refers to another aspect of human life, but the soul is certainly the spiritual part of a person believed to exist after death. Like the biblical quotation, what shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and lose his own soul? So the soul is that aspect of a man's life that is believed to live after physical death. So certainly that is really not the intended meaning here. You cannot say there is a need to raise the teacher's salary in order to boost their soul. You cannot say in order to boost their spirit. You can also you cannot also say in order to boost their moral, because moral here is an adjective and it must come after a noun. So we are then left with option D, which is morale. Morale. Now, this actually is the appropriate word, because this word refers to the amount of confidence and enthusiasm that a person or a group has at a particular point in time. You can boost someone's morale or someone's morale. Morale actually, not morale, morale. All right, you boost people's morale when you raise their salary, you boost their morale. All right, or you raise their morale, or you improve their morale. These are words that can be used, in collocation with morale. You boost someone's morale or people's morale. So that's actually the appropriate word. Now, question 18. The librarian has not entered the new books in the dash. A, catalog. B, roster. C, list. And D, directory. Let's take this one by one. Now, option A is catalog. A catalog is a list of items, and of course, is appropriate, is relevant to library, because you always talk of the library catalog. It's a list of items, a list of books that are, that are displayed in a library, which you can actually read or borrow as the case may be. So the word catalog is the appropriate, word to use. It fits in within the vocabulary of the library. Now, option B is roster, and roster is a list or a plan showing tons of duty for persons in an organization. You can talk of a duty roster. When you have people working in an organization and there are duties that they have to do in turns, one person will perform a duty at a given time, and then another person will perform the same duty at another time. So you have a duty roster, but that is certainly not the relevant words, the appropriate words to describe a list in a library. All right, so the option C is list. A list is a general term for, all the things, general name for a number of related items or names. It can be a list of anything, but then the word we need here is unique to the library. All right, so the list doesn't fit in because there is already a unique name, a name that is unique to the library, which is a catalog. So D is directory. A directory is actually a book, or it can even be a website containing a list of names or organizations, arranged in alphabetical order or according to the themes or subject matter, if you like. Now, the items you can find in a directory, include the names of the persons or organizations listed in that directory, their addresses and phone numbers, or probably their web site addresses, email addresses, as the case may be. The details relevant to them, those individuals or organizations. All right, so now question 19. The textbook is very costly. I cannot dash it to my students. A, commit. B, afford. C, endorse. D, recommend. Now, using the elimination method, let's begin to look at this one by one. When you commit something, you perform an act, or you dedicate yourself to a cause. You commit yourself to something, or you commit an action. Of course, something in most cases that is negative in nature, you often hear about people committing a crime. All right, so that word really cannot fit in here. You cannot say I cannot commit it to my students. No. B, afford. Now, to afford something is to have enough money to pay for something, and it doesn't really fit in here. All right, C is endorse. You know, to endorse is to sign something like a check. If you endorse a check, it means you sign on its back to instruct a bank to pay someone. Or if you endorse someone, it means that you declare your public approval or support for the person. So the meaning really doesn't fit in here. Then the option that is appropriate is D, which is recommend. You know, to recommend is actually to put forward something or somebody with approval as being suitable for a particular purpose or role. Example, you talk of the recommended textbooks, you know. So actually, a teacher can recommend certain books to the students. A school can have a recommended list of books, all right? So that is appropriate in this context. Then question 20, which is the last question in this section. The weather is too hot. I need some water to dash my thirst. A, wet. B, quench. C, cool. D, soak. Now let's look at the words one by one. A, to wet. What do you, if you wet something, you just touch something with a liquid, you know, just to wet something is to touch something with a liquid. So that actually is not what you need when you are thirsty. You don't just want to test to touch your tongue, for instance, or your mouth with liquid. That's not what you want when you actually feel thirsty. Then to quench is the appropriate word there, because it is the word that people actually use to quench your thirst. And to quench means to satisfy your thirst by drinking. That just, you drink water to quench your thirst, you know. When you quench your thirst, you satisfy your thirst, all right, by drinking. That's the appropriate word, to quench your thirst. Option C is cool, and it doesn't fit in because to cool is simply to make something cool, all right? If you put on switch on an air conditioner, then of course you make the room cool, but that's really not what you want when you are thirsty. Then the next one is soak. When you soak something, you make it wet by immersing it in a liquid. If you put something inside a bucket of water, something like, let's say, a piece of foam, then you soak it. All right. So, but that's a different meaning. You don't need to soak your thirst. You need to quench your thirst. So that's exactly, this is where we draw the curtain in today's video. We have been able to look at all the questions in section 2 using the various grammatical principles. And of course, let's look at the grammatical principles we used as tools. We looked at register, which is the use of language for a particular purpose or in a particular setting. All right. The specific vocabulary chosen and expected in connection with a particular speech situation. We looked at how appropriate register is in solving questions in section 2. Then we looked at vocabulary, you know, which has 3 different meanings. All of the words in a language, the words used in a particular context, like when you talk of the business vocabulary, the medical vocabulary, and so on. Then the third meaning is the words an individual person knows in a language. Then we looked at collocation, a group of 2 or more words that are commonly used together in English. Collocations are words that usually go together. And we have looked at all these. Appropriateness of the use of words in given context. So we have looked at the ABCs of WASC English Part 2, and we have actually looked at West African Senior School Certificate Examination 2020 Objective Test Questions, Section 2, and we examined and solved these questions, illustrating them and explaining the correct answers in the light of these grammatical concepts, register, vocabulary, and collocation. I hope you learned a lot from today's video. If you enjoyed today's lesson, like the video and share it with your friends and relations. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so, because when you really subscribe to this channel, you are achieving a win-win situation, because you don't really lose anything when you subscribe. You don't pay money to subscribe. It is free of charge. And when you subscribe, you are actually boosting my morale, and you are actually motivating me and supporting me and encouraging me to upload more videos that will be useful to a lot of people out there. So it is really something positive that you are doing when you subscribe to this channel. This channel is a channel where we help those who are going to sit for their English exams to score high in their exams. And beyond that, we discuss linguistic concepts and we equip our viewers with linguistic tools that will improve their communicative abilities, that will help them to communicate the ideas with clarity. And beyond discussing language questions on this channel, we discuss content writing, we share ideas on digital marketing, content marketing, internet marketing. We share ideas that will be of help to people who want to make money online. So this channel is really very useful if you are interested in these areas of life. So if you are really interested, click on the bell icon as well, so that whenever new videos are uploaded on the channel, you will be instantly notified. Once again, I want to thank you for being part of today's episode. See you